So I'm here in my grandpa's Chevy Colorado with grandpa in the driver's seat. You can't see him because he wishes to keep his face off the screen. And today we're going to get into something that, best way I can put it, him and I have a lot of disagreements about what smartphone we like to use. You're an Android guy, aren't you?
Oh yeah.
Those of you who watch my channel, you know I'm an Apple guy. So two people who use two completely different choices of smartphones. But there's one thing I think we both can agree upon.
That Android's the right choice?
I was referring to the automotive sector. We both have some interest in it, right?
Oh, okay, yes.
So he recently bought this Chevy Colorado. How are you liking it, by the way?
I love it.
And the Chevy Colorado offers a new feature that both of us love. Well, at least our versions of it. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. I've done a few of these videos in the past with my friend Salt Pepper, except, well, he's kind of ghosted me at the moment. So today we're doing this contest between me and my grandpa. And actually, conveniently, we tried doing this a few months ago, except the system freaked out and stopped launching Apple CarPlay for some odd reason. But in that time where, well, basically nothing had happened for a few months, Android Auto just got an update and like it completely redesigned the layout. So isn't that convenient? We're covering the latest update in Android Auto in this whole challenge. Meanwhile, we're still waiting on vehicles to support CarPlay 2.0, which is quite amazing. I don't think you know what CarPlay 2.0 is, but it basically takes over the entire car's displays and optimizes it to work with your phone.
But you have to use an Apple phone. That's the downside.
Well, to me, that's the upside. Because Android has not done much that's interesting. Anywho, enough rambling. Cue the intro. So here is Android Auto. This is the latest update where there used to be some home button here and a toolbar displaying either, say we're in the maps right now. If the maps were being displayed in the toolbar, would display your media controls and such, along with your notifications. And what was here? Google Assistant, I think, last time. But now we have this little home bar with a new home screen, for example. Let me see, can I dismiss that? I can dismiss that. So up in that corner where I just dismissed that, you can get your most recent notification displayed. And if you swipe and dismiss that, well, then up comes your media section right here, where, as you can see, we like listening to country music a lot. This is your kind of general home screen, I guess you could say. But if you want, say, your Android typical app drawer style home screen, well, you can tap that and boom, all of your Android apps are displayed right here, assuming that these Android apps have Android Auto support, which the majority of these do, including if your infotainment system does not have a physical home button, then you can tap that right there to exit that. But here's one thing that I got to bring up, and this is just an advantage to Android Auto altogether that I just got to give you the point for. Android Auto has way more app support. Like what types of obscure apps do you have? Fuelio? What's that?
Track your fuel mileage. I don't think that'll actually run on here.
Well, considering it's actually displaying on here, I would think it would actually.
Yeah, I don't know.
Facebook Messenger, I do not believe Apple CarPlay supports that, but I don't use Facebook Messenger myself. You got reminders, you got a whole bunch of podcasts app, including, I guess, Podbean is your particular podcast app.
Yeah.
Oh, and you have smart things?
Yeah, but again, I don't think, I don't know what it would do on a phone, on a car here.
I would think maybe it'd do things like control garage door openers or something. Or
yeah,
maybe stuff like that. But yeah, that's just one advantage I got to bring up in Android Auto. You just have way more app support than what Apple CarPlay is going to have to offer. Take that win while you got it. Of course, you got your other Android Auto typical stuff like Google Maps, everybody's favorite. I'm more of an Apple Maps guy, to be honest. I mean, everyone loves Google Maps, evidently, where you also have satellite view. I really like satellite view.
I use it for driving. I went to roads.
I can see roads right there.
Yeah.
Other than that, I thought there was a dedicated notification panel. Is that this right here? Yeah, so there's also a dedicated notification panel. I am definitely going to remember to edit in a sensor so that way nobody sees your personal messages and such. And that's basically a tour of the newly revised Android Auto. All right, so now we are in Apple CarPlay using my phone, and as you can see, it's definitely different than Android Auto, but it has some similarities. So So as you can see on the side here, we've got kind of the similar bar to what Android Auto had, just put it on the side, as well as a little preview home screen. I'm not entirely sure what exactly you'd call it, but
yeah, it's your calendar there.
Probably should remove that pin at some point because I don't go there anymore. We got obviously the maps taking up the most significant amount of space here. We also have a media tab, calendar tab with some notifications, as well as I guess a quick destination entry thing. But if we swipe over here, we get also our list of apps, and yeah, this is just where Android Auto is definitely going to be better in terms of third-party app support. I've noticed that I have a lot more first-party apps in here, like audiobooks, for example. Supposedly there's news. I didn't see a news thing on yours. I have Apple Maps, and I believe, yes, I have Google Maps on this, but also as you can see, and this is definitely available for Android Auto as well, I've got a few electric car apps like PlugShare and Electrify America and ChargePoint. Is the Tesla app on here? No, it is not. No Tesla app on here. Tesla, get to work on that, please. Something that I noticed about this, I got a wallpaper. I have a nice wallpaper, and I believe I can go into settings here and change the wallpaper. I said change the wallpaper to, there's a few options here, as you can see. Evidently it changes depending on which operating system, like am I running iOS 15 or 14 and such like that. So it appears here's the 14 wallpapers. That's when they added wallpaper support, 14 and 15. So it has all of them. What other settings here? Not much. Driving focus. I guess there's a dedicated focus for that. Anywho, enough of the settings app. Yeah, as you can see, the app support, these are all things that you have on Android Auto as well, including Spotify and PlugShare and ChargePoint and such. All of those are available on Android Auto, and Android Auto just has way more. So that's the one downside to Apple CarPlay. But also, you know how you have a dedicated notification shade in Android Auto?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have that here.
Well, that's kind of a downside on your point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true. There's a few home screen things that I just do not have. I like how, I'd say this screen is definitely more populated with different options for quick tile access, because I've noticed on Android Auto, you only had room for 3 stuff. I've got 4 displayed here. This was one of the key things that Android Auto was really trying to copy. It was this, push this for your apps and such, but also have the tile view as well. And why am I hearing Kyle Connor talk through my phone here? So there's that. Oh, and then obviously you got the most recent apps right there. And I don't think there's much more to discuss in terms of the layout. The rest is just Siri commands. Did your phone just stop recording?
You go to sleep?
No, I'm on the home screen. Your phone just stopped recording.
Really?
I hate Android phones' camera recording so much. They're so bad. All right, should we run a couple smart assistant tests?
Yep.
First challenge is basically to navigate to a specific address. I don't know if you happen to recognize this address.
Yeah, I think I know where that might be.
This is a classic on previous Apple CarPlay and Android Auto tests. Navigate to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. For those of you who do not know, it's the address of the White House.
Okay, so do you want to do it by voice, or?
Yep.
You use this button?
That or the microphone button right there, that works.
1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C.
I'm setting your destination to the White House in District of Columbia, United States.
That was easy. Boom, just like that. Ooh, it's already started our navigation. Hey Siri, navigate to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C.
Getting directions to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Southeast Washington.
I noticed it didn't mention that was the White House this time.
Starting route to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, Southeast.
I guess that's just because Google Assistant is more of a, well, it's based off of Google search and such. Siri's not exactly that. Also, something else that I noticed when it brought this up, it said Southeast. Usually it does Northwest. Next up, navigate to, I'll remember to censor this out, but this is a test that actually Android Auto has been failing in the previous version a lot, so I want to see if they fixed it. Navigate, do you have an address of a contact per se located in your contacts?
I think your house is there.
Okay, so try my house then.
Not sure where to find you. Where did you want to navigate to?
Navigate to...
All right. let's go.
Nope, that's not it.
Navigate to home.
All right, home, let's go.
I cheated.
Yeah, you cheated. Navigate to house.
Not sure where to find house. Where are you headed? I can't find house. Where did you want to go?
I hate to tell you this, but I got called out a fail. They still haven't fixed that. And the funny thing was that used to work just fine in the original versions of Android Auto, but that's a serious bug. I don't know if they're assuming that you know where your friends or family member's house is, but say, what if they moved and you gotta figure out where their new address is?
Well, the question is it looking at in your contacts list?
It should be.
And that should be in there. So I'm confused there too, why it's not pulling it up. Try navigate to house.
I can't find that place. Where are you headed? Okay. Here we go.
So it finally did it, but that was a real pain. Imagine if you were doing this while driving. That's not convenient. I have a feeling Apple's going to be a lot easier with that because I've seen it absolutely drown Android on this exact test time and time again. Hey Siri, navigate to Salt Pepper's house.
I don't see any matching places. Sorry about that.
Ooh.
What the?
Ouch.
It has never failed me on that before. Hey Siri, navigate to house.
Sorry, I don't see any matches in your contacts.
That is strange. It's never done that before. I want to try one more thing. Hey Siri, navigate to...
Sorry, I don't see any matches in your contacts.
So we both failed that. That's a shocker. It's always gotten that. Come on, Siri. What were you thinking? Next one. Because this is a bit of a famous one I like to use in our area because we have like 3 subways. I tell it to navigate to the nearest subway. So do you have multiple subways in town? All right.
Yeah,
navigate to the nearest subway then.
Navigate to nearest subway.
Subway, all right.
Boom, it already did it. Hey Siri, navigate to Subway.
One possibility I see is Subway on South Central Avenue in about a half mile to your north. How about that one?
Sure.
Getting directions to Subway.
I noticed before it started the route, it was giving me a list of other subway options, and one of them had a star rating system. This has been brought up in other comparisons as well, and the reason why is because evidently Siri likes to give you a bunch of options and show you the rating, so maybe the nearest one isn't exactly the best quality subway. Maybe...
Then why did you ask for the nearest one?
Would you want to go to Subway in Las Vegas, Nevada? I kind of like how it actually provides you the different star ratings, so that way you say, hey, maybe there's a better one in town you might want to go to or something, because sometimes the nearest just isn't the best option.
Yeah.
Send a text message, subscribe. That's what the text message is supposed to be.
Send a text message.
Oh, hold on.
Who do you want to text?
Send it to me.
Sure, what's the message?
Subscribe.
I got subscribe. Ready to send it?
Send.
Sending your message.
It came through right there on my phone. Hey Siri, send text to...
What do you want to say to Grandpa?
Subscribe.
Your message says, subscribe. Do you want to send it or change it?
Send it.
It's sent.
Got it.
All right, that worked. That was fairly easy. General query. This is something that Google easily does. I have no doubt Google will get this. How old is Elon Musk?
How old is Elon Musk?
Elon Musk is 51 years old. By the way, next time you can also press and hold the mic button on your steering wheel to ask me anything.
See?
Yep. Hey Siri, how old is Elon Musk?
Elon Musk is 51 years old.
Here's another one, and actually I've seen one of them do a strange thing where it tried to navigate you to this place. I asked what is the capital, and it tried to navigate me there, except it can't because the capital's across the ocean. Capital of Norway.
What is the capital of Norway?
Oslo is the capital of Norway.
Just like that, and it was actually Apple that failed that challenge.
Really?
Yeah. All right, here comes the scary one because it really screwed it up one time. Hey Siri,
Sorry, I'm having...
what is the capital of Norway?
Oslo is the capital of Norway.
It got it! It actually got it! It didn't navigate me there! I don't suppose you have any downloaded music on your phone because that's just not what you... that's not how you listen to music.
Not typically. I'm sure there's something on there, but I don't know what it would be.
I'd probably just give you a pass on this one, and I've seen Android Auto do this all the time. I'm going to guess that it does this task just fine. So here comes some music, and I have some downloaded music. Hey Siri, play Cheesecake.
Cheesecake by Louis Armstrong, now playing on Apple Music.
That's not it.
Loves cheesecake.
What the?
Cheesecake, munching on the cheesecake.
Hey Siri, play Glitter.
Now playing Glitter by 070 Shake.
That's still not the one that I have. Hey Siri, play Cheesecake by Ian Post.
Here's Cheesecake by Ian Post.
So I had to specify the artist. So it needed me to specify the artist. That was the first time I've ever needed me to specify the artist. Play country music on Pandora.
Play country music on Pandora.
Alright, asking Pandora to play today's...
Cut itself off.
Hello?
I do know it's typically slow at doing this.
Play country music on Pandora.
Alright, asking Pandora to play today's country radio. Sorry, Pandora isn't responding. Please try opening the app to continue.
Ooh, that's a first.
Open Pandora.
Opening Pandora.
Play country music.
Got it. Asking Pandora to play country music.
Play.
Oh, it just started. That was a strangely long process.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I've done that.
I've
Something
never
similar to that
seen
before.
Android Auto take this long to actually start playing music. That was weirdly slow, and I don't think it was cellular issues. Yeah, there's your cellular right there. It's really strong. Hey Siri, play country music on Pandora. I hope
I'll need to access your Pandora data to do this.
Oh, that was a...
To do that, you'll need to verify your account details in Pandora.
I don't even know if I'm logged in, actually. I gotta check if I'm logged into Pandora.
Well, that sounds like a fail.
I don't use the app that much, so that's why I don't think I'm logged in. Hey Siri, play country music on Pandora.
To do that, you'll need to verify your account details in Pandora.
Just did.
Fail 2.
That's... What is going on?
Strike 2. You want to try for 3 strikes? Open Pandora.
Okay, so it does that. I know it has Pandora support, and this has worked before.
Play country music.
There we go. So that's working. Hey Siri, play country music on Pandora.
Now playing country on Pandora.
That is weird.
I like that it recognizes the button and everything.
I like just calling out to it, so yeah, I like just calling out to it so that way I don't have to hunt for the button.
Yeah, I mean the button's not a matter of hunting for it, but
Well, sometimes automakers will put it in the dumbest spot and you can't find it. That, and sometimes if you drive different cars, the button will be located somewhere else. So rather than having to figure out where it is, I'd just rather call out to it, to be honest. Yeah, that was a odd pain, though. I think that was just, I haven't used the app in forever and such. I don't know what I did to get it to work. I assume if I used the app more often, I think it would work flawlessly.
probably.
But I don't use it that
Oh,
often.
part of it's getting used to what, you know, what it want, what words to use, you know. And
2 more questions to go. What's the weather?
what's today's weather?
Today in Maine, it'll be partly cloudy, with a forecasted high of 52 and a low of 31. Right now it's 51 degrees and sunny.
Hey Siri, what's the weather?
It's currently partly cloudy and 50 degrees. Expect cloudy skies starting tonight. Temperatures are heading down from 50 to 34 degrees tonight.
Last one. What am I doing tonight?
What is my schedule for tonight?
There's one entry today. At 8 p.m., you have auto.
There we go. Hey Siri, what am I doing tonight?
You have Apple CarPlay is clearly better than Android Auto at 8 p.m.
That's a fault.
We both had faults though. I'm still surprised that we both failed the contact challenge.
I am too. I'm going to work on that.
I am very surprised that we both... Siri had always gotten it. That was the first time Siri has let me down on that. Google Assistant, I know, has been failing that for the past 2 years or so because they never addressed it in that bug ever since they had changed it to the previous layout. But Siri, I am absolutely shocked she failed that. And that is something that I do tell my phone all the time, actually. So I am very surprised she failed that. But other than that, a couple of other things like the Pandora, I'm sure if I used it more often, it would have been more seamless. Probably the same with you. I mean, though, don't you use Pandora more often than I do?
Yeah, I do. I use it all the time.
So,
especially in here even.
yeah, so that was weird how Pandora wasn't working as smoothly for you.
I usually set it up on my phone before I leave.
Yeah, that's usually the smart thing to do.
I may or may not have forgotten to record a little outro clip summing things up, so now that I finished basically editing the entire competition, I guess I'll just record that last little bit I forgot to record. For the most part, summing things up that happened in the whole challenge, that's kind of weird how you may have noticed the point system. They both actually scored literally the exact same thing, and when both were losing points, it's because they both actually lost points on the exact same challenges and the exact same amount of points on the exact same challenges. And I did verify with this with my grandpa to make sure it's fair, and he agreed, especially after we got home. He realized they literally performed the exact same thing. They both failed the exact same questions, and that's kind of funny if I'm being honest, because we were supposed to figure out who's better, and they both did literally the exact same in terms of performance. But if you wanted to pick a clear winner, not just based off of the whole Siri versus Google Assistant, because those are basically wars that you can do all the time with other phones and such, which I should probably do another voice assistant challenge. I haven't done one of those in a while. But for the most part, if you include the feature set that both have to offer as well, one could argue, especially due to our conversation in the beginning, that Android Auto technically should be winning the whole thing, because aside from the voice assistant challenge, which basically it was a tie for that whole thing, you could argue that the feature set that we were talking about in Android Auto is more useful and more functional compared to the feature set in Apple CarPlay, and that's because the notification shade maybe not be useful for the driver while he's driving, because the driver's trying to focus on the road and shouldn't be reading notifications off of a panel, but maybe the passenger could, for example. Or if you happen to be stopped in construction where, yeah, you're gonna have to wait a bit, you can definitely scroll down the notification panel and see what you missed while waiting for the construction workers to let you pass through. I do have to say, I do miss Android Auto's toolbar, where if you were full screen in Google Maps, Maps, for example, there was the toolbar with your media controls for whatever music or podcast app you have playing in the background. And unfortunately, they took that away. So if you go full screen into Google Maps now, you don't have the toolbar anymore. You only get those lists of recent apps at the very bottom, like you do with Apple CarPlay, for example. So that is one feature that I argue was really great, and I'm not exactly a fan that Google took that away. That was a really good feature. And okay, you could still technically do the controls from the home screen where you got the map and then a much bigger tile for your media controls and such, but I'd argue that you don't need the media controls to be that big, especially when you only need to account for a total of 3 buttons. I don't see it necessary to display the album art, especially when you're not focused on looking at the album art, you're focused on driving. So I just gotta say, that's a disadvantage that they removed the toolbar that used to be on Android Auto. And if you don't know what I'm referring to, then definitely watch my last Android Auto versus Apple CarPlay video, which is actually on the Random Alpha, not the Random Alpha Gadgets, because those videos were being done before this channel even existed. I'll leave a link to that in the description. But yeah, that is definitely a feature that I've noticed is missing, and I do miss it, to be honest. That was a really good feature, and I enjoyed that back when I still had my Samsung phone and before I switched to Apple CarPlay with my iPhone. So yeah, one could argue that Android Auto, especially due to the feature set that we're talking about, you could argue it's more functional compared to just, ooh, you can change your wallpaper, which again, you're not supposed to focus on looks and aesthetics while you're driving. So looks and aesthetics, I can argue, are important when trying to do something real quick. You need something familiar and easy to use, and that's definitely what Apple CarPlay is. Android Auto, you could also argue, is fairly easy to use, though I would argue that there is an extra layer of complication, especially with its home screen and such. And now that your media control is no longer there, it's just now you have to figure out which app is it. I'd argue that it's definitely not as easy to use as Apple CarPlay is nowadays. That, and another thing about Apple CarPlay that I like compared to Android Auto, is definitely the Now Playing app. I don't know what is playing. I can just enter the Now Playing app and it'll take me to whatever app is playing audio, and I can pause it right from there. Versus Android Auto, if something's playing, then you basically have to go to that whatever media tile is right there, and I don't recall if it defaults to that tile home screen or if you can get it to default to the app screen. Apple CarPlay, you can get it to default to the app screen if the tile screen is just not your jam. But yeah, minor differences like that. For the most part, I'd argue Android Auto is actually the more, if we were basing this on points, then I'd argue Android Auto is actually the better driver assistant software screencaster thing, whatever you want to call it. And obviously my grandpa would agree, as he's an Android fan. What do you expect? So I'm going to finally wrap this up with vehicle support, and that's because this is not supported on every vehicle. For the most part, you're not going to find a phone that does not support Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. If you do need to know because you happen to use an extremely old phone, Apple CarPlay, I do not believe it matters which iPhone you use, but it has to run iOS 7 or newer, which we're on iOS 16 at the moment. I'm pretty sure whatever phone you're using definitely supports Apple CarPlay, unless you happen to be a vintage Apple collector and your SIM happens to be in an iPhone 4 or the original iPhone, for example. Those don't support iOS 7, so because of that, you're unlikely to get Apple CarPlay. But yeah, to get Apple CarPlay, you need iOS 7 or newer, which I'm on 16.4, so. And for Android, again, it doesn't really matter which Android phone you use. It just has to run Android 5 or newer. And this is actually where you might want to pay attention, because yes, there are some brand new Android phones that do get released that do not run an Android version newer than Android 5. You'd be surprised. It's true. There are Android phones that do get released that aren't running a version of Android older than Android 5. So if it's not running Android 5 or newer, yeah, you're not going to get Android Auto support. And for the most part, Android Auto, to my knowledge, is basically an app that you download onto your phone. This is another feature that I'm very confused, because Android Auto used to have a functionality where if your car doesn't support Android Auto, because this used to be a problem where cars would only support Apple CarPlay and not Android Auto. Like BMW and Toyota was infamous for this. BMW used to be CarPlay only. They do support Android Auto now, but for a long time they were CarPlay only. And Toyota, back when they were adding their phone screencasting functionality, Toyota used to only support Apple CarPlay at first. So whenever cars were getting Apple CarPlay versus Android Auto, they'd only start off CarPlay first, while Android was an afterthought. So in the meantime, while they were waiting for Android Auto support to come to vehicles, there's a dedicated app that you could launch, and it'll basically turn your UI into kind of an Android Auto based UI, so that way it's more optimized optimized for driving, and you can mount your phone in the vent or on the dash, and you have your Android Auto based UI, which is really helpful until supposedly the automaker will add Android Auto support. So interestingly enough, we've gone through my grandpa's phone so much, and we actually cannot find the dedicated Android Auto app, which means they must have removed that functionality, which doesn't make sense because, believe it or not, there are still cars out there that are CarPlay only. Like, for example, Lucid. Lucid just got Apple CarPlay, and from the sounds of it, they have no interest in adding Android Auto. So that's one thing that I wanted to point out. Android Auto used to have the app that you could use, though from the looks of it, and we've searched his phone everywhere, and I've done this when setting up other friends' Android phones to work with Android Auto. We cannot find the app anywhere anymore. So if your car doesn't support Android Auto and you want to use it, yeah, you can't just put your phone on the dash and activate Android Auto on the phone, which kind of sucks, to be honest. That was really nice functionality that I actually wish the iPhone had. I wished it had a CarPlay UI mode that you could turn on when you mount your phone to the dash, and you still can't do that. And not all of us drive cars that support Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. For example, I may drive a Buick, which Buicks support Apple CarPlay and Android Auto for now, at least. More on that in a bit, but my car is so old it doesn't support that. So because of that, I can't use Apple CarPlay, and I used to be able to use Android Auto if I wanted to, but they removed the app, so I can't use that either. That's really sucks. Please fix that, everyone. And the final thing that I want to address about car support is, why is it important that the car support Apple CarPlay and Android Auto? Well, for one, it brings a familiar user experience to quite often a complex thing that, let's be honest, car manufacturers, software is not exactly their strong suit. They are not great at designing UIs that are easy to use. Like Mercedes, I mean, some might argue it's easy to use, though I'd argue that it's easy to use if you know how to use it. But if you step in a Mercedes for the first time, you're definitely not going to have any clue on how to navigate your way through MBUX. Same with iDrive, that's another complicated one, especially because it's more optimized for a scroll wheel versus a touch screen. So because of that, I'd argue that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are important because some of us may own different cars, which means they use different infotainment systems. Like, some people will drive a Ford F-150, but they might drive a Chevy Equinox. They both use two completely different infotainment systems, and because of that, it's easier to just plug in your phone and use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, so that way you have the same infotainment experience wherever you go, which to some people, that does have a lot of value, and I'm not going to fault people for wanting to just plug their phone in and use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto all the time. But also, because our lives are so connected and integrated into our smartphones, I mean, supposedly Google has released Android Automotive for automakers to use for their car infotainment systems, which in theory could help them with this. It's still not as optimized and as integrated as just plugging your phone into the display and projecting it on the screen. What is the advantage to this? In today's age, we mostly do a lot of texting with our friends and family and such. We don't do phone calls that much anymore, so because of that, we need a better way to text, and we all know it's illegal to text and drive, and by the way, it's not smart to actually pick up your phone and text and drive. Please don't do that. And Apple CarPlay and Android Auto actually make it very easy to send text messages, as you may have noticed throughout this challenge. However, Android Automotive, there's a difference between Android Auto and Android Automotive. Automotive is basically an infotainment system core for automakers to use for their main infotainment system, while Android Auto is basically projecting your Android phone screen onto the car infotainment system. Android Automotive, to my knowledge, does not have this functionality because, well, it's not really connected to your phone, and Google Assistant is going to behave differently and not exactly as phone friendly because, well, Google Assistant's in a car, which means it has to be more optimized for car related things and not exactly smartphone related things that we do today, like sending text messages, for example. Even though a lot of car infotainment systems that are actually really good, for example, Tesla's infotainment, it's amazing because they actually, well, not only do they have your standard radio and such, but they actually have built-in Spotify and Apple Music, two of the most common music streaming services that we use today. I use Apple Music, for example, and I do have Spotify downloaded for when my friends want to send me playlists and such. To my knowledge, they do not have any podcasts app. I would like to see them integrate a podcast app because that's something that I do not see the Tesla supporting, as well as others that decide, nope, we're not going to use Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. So sure, they may have some of these common apps that we use all the time downloaded and native and very well integrated into the infotainment system, but I'd argue that we should still have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration because there are some things that those not integrated systems just don't have that would be really useful, like sending text messages, integrated podcast functionality, because I've fact, even check most car infotainment systems, they don't really have a dedicated podcast app. I don't even think Android Automotive Core supports podcasts. That's kind of odd in my opinion. And even though we're moving more into finally over-the-air software updates for infotainment systems, finally, I've been complaining about this, especially for maps, because my grandparents happen to own a Chevy Equinox with built-in navigation, but that doesn't get software updates over the air, and you can technically get it updated if you go to the dealer for newer maps and such, but as of right now, the maps that are integrated into their car, they are outdated. There are roads that are completely missing that should be there, but they are not there, and if you try to tell it to navigate to a certain destination, it's not going to know where that is because, well, businesses change and such. So finally, I'm glad that a lot of automakers are switching to an over-the-air updatable infotainment system, especially for navigation, as things around the world change location or businesses rename themselves and such. That is great. I do like that, but it is still not as seamless of an experience as, well, doing everything that we do on our phone, like text messaging, third-party messaging apps. I notice most of these infotainment systems do not support that. Calendar events, you're not going to find anything calendar related on Android Automotive or all the other automakers' infotainment systems. So because of that, it's less personal, and those infotainment systems that choose to reject that, even though they may have done a better job at integrating some of the stuff that we use quite often, like Apple Music and Spotify, I'm looking at Tesla for example, there's still a lot of functionality that's missing from it that honestly would make the experience better, like knowing that we have an appointment at the doctor's or something, so it'll instantly set, here's how you get to the doctor's, or you're getting text messages from your friend, because unfortunately we do not do as many phone calls anymore, and I do prefer phone calls over text messaging, by the way. So because of that, that integration is just not there, and I am upset that some, like Tesla and Rivian for example, they are adamant that they want to do things their way and not integrate Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, when honestly our lives are so integrated into our smartphones, where I do think integrating Apple CarPlay and Android Auto would make communicating with their smartphone, especially while we're driving, because seriously, we do not want to pick these up, and there are instances, especially in a Tesla, where you still kind of have to pick that up to remind yourself, do you have any appointments? Even though yes, you could call to Siri, you're still only getting Siri through your smartphone speakers, and that's not exactly that convenient, and yeah, you get the point. I believe that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto should be integrated into every single vehicle, and GM is unfortunately looking to ditch Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and I genuinely think that's a mistake, especially due to how our lives are revolving all around our smartphones and such. So yeah, it's important. This is why it should be integrated, and for the most part, it doesn't matter if you use CarPlay or Android Auto. I believe that for the most part, they're basically the same in terms of functionality and such, and it doesn't really matter which you choose. So if you're making a buying decision on Apple CarPlay or Android Auto in terms of which smartphone you want to buy, that doesn't matter. They are both very well-rounded systems, and especially after the recent Android Auto update, it's basically the same as Apple CarPlay. The UI is basically the same, where the recent menu is basically on the bottom instead of on the left side closest to the driver. Though in the UK, by the way, they do actually shift the recent apps bar in Apple CarPlay to the right side for UK drivers, or well, any other right-hand drive vehicle. Alright, so that is Apple CarPlay versus Android Auto. That was an interesting challenge, and yeah, there's that. I'll definitely have to do this again in a few years at some point. Thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with the stuff below. My name is DeWolf, Random Alpha, signing out.